Greetings, fellow readers and story lovers, and welcome back to my channel. And welcome to my first queer book review of the month, because it is June, which means it is Pride Month, and I thought we are just going to kick it off the right way by reviewing a Sapphic romance story. So, the book in question for this week's review is Some Girls Do by Jennifer Dugan. Dugan? I'm not entirely sure how to pronounce her last name, but it is, like I said, the first in the June lineup, which will consist of 4 books in total, and is part of the Sapphic book review series that I'm planning to do for Pride Month. So let's get on with the review. So, Some Girls Do is a queer YA romance. The characters are teenagers. They are in high school. I think they're on their senior year of high school, which means they're in the last year of high school. I did not go to American high school, but I think this is like the last year before they go off to college. It follows the story of Morgan, who's an elite track star, and Ruby, who is a car enthusiast who also does a beauty pageants. And there's going to be a whole section about that. Because if it sounds nonsensical, it is on paper, but it makes sense in the story. So Morgan is out and proud and identifies as a lesbian, and Ruby is still closeted when she falls in love with Morgan, and that is kind of like the central conflict of the story, as you can imagine. Already mentioned, it's a modern American setting. It's a relationship focused book, and it has a relatively light tone, but there are some deeper issues and more serious topics that will appear, and I will flag when it comes to it. So let's talk about the characters, Ruby and Morgan, but also some of the supporting cast. I will include a light spoiler warning in here. I will not go into full details about the plot, but I will obviously talk about the book and also about later chapters. So if you want to go in with absolutely no idea, tap out, come back when you've read the book. First thing I noticed is after 4 chapters, I already had an incredible sense of who these characters are, of who Morgan and Ruby are as people. It's like I said, we have like these two storylines. We have Morgan, who is very confident, very outspoken. She used to go to a Catholic private school, but was then forced to switch when she came out as a lesbian because Catholic private schools and out queer girls do not mix. But apart from that, like apart from like, having to switch schools, she has a very supportive family. Like her parents are in the process of suing her former school because of the way that she was treated. And she then moves in with her brother, who already lives on his own and has like a hair salon, a barber shop, something like that. So is entirely capable of supporting himself, and her parents also kind of like still give Morgan an allowance. So very supportive family setup. And at this new school, she immediately, like I think in chapter 3, or something, she joins the Sprite Club, which obviously didn't exist at her last school. So this kind of like feels a little bit huge to her at the beginning. But then she kind of realizes that there are no track stars, no athletes in this Pride Club, because athletes and sports, yeah, because sports and queerness do not mix. And this is then also like one of the side subplots, one of the issues that gets like highlighted, but it's not the main issue, obviously. But I immediately kind of like, because she's so out and proud, I immediately kind of clocked that her issue is perspective taking. Like, not everybody can afford to be out and proud. Not everybody can afford to be so loud in their queerness. This is like an issue that very much gets highlighted with Ruby in the course of the story. Um, but she constantly feels like she's not doing enough for the LGBTQ community. Like, even though she joins Pride Club, and at Pride Club at this Pride Club, she meets another queer boy who volunteers for like a local LGBTQ community center, and she starts volunteering there too. But she's like constantly feeling like, oh, we're not doing enough. Oh, but what is the point of this? I'm not really changing anything. Like, how do we change things? To the point where it almost becomes obnoxious. Like, even one of the counselors at this community center kind of like calls her out, like, hey, you're doing plenty, calm down a notch. Like, you're not going to change the world overnight, but you're doing plenty. And like I said, like, she is out and proud. She's very loud about being queer, which not wrong. She is not wrong in being proud about her queerness and like being open about it. We should all be able to be open about what we are, how we want to live our lives. And like there is nothing wrong with that, but it ignores other people's reality, which leads me to Ruby's storyline. So she has a very different family situation than Morgan. She lives in a trailer park with her mom, and we get like the sense like recently her mom's right-wing alcoholic boyfriend has moved in. And the reason I'm saying he's right-wing is because Fox News is constantly playing in the background. Also, like money is very tight. Like you get this like in one chapter it's mentioned that like the electricity got shut off because they didn't pay or couldn't pay the electricity bill. And there's this really complex dynamic between Ruby and her mother. So her mother used to be a beauty pageant queen who was forced to stop when she got pregnant with Morgan at 16. And now the mother kind of like lives vicariously through Ruby, which is why Ruby does these beauty pageant contests thingies, because her mom forces her to. She would rather work on her car. She has like a beautifully restored. It's kind of like the book that is on the cover. I forgot which make and model it was, but it was kind of like a it was about to be kind of like demolished. It was very rundown, and she restored it and is very proud of it. And that's kind of like what she wants to do with her life. But she does these beauty pageants because she wants to please her mom. And like I said, there's this very complicated dynamic. I will include a light trigger warning here because this delves into the territory of parental abuse. And if you have experience with that, you will probably recognize some of the stuff that is going on with Ruby and her mother. So just be aware of that. So Ruby feels kind of like responsible for her mother and for the situation that they're in, kind of like, oh yeah, if I hadn't been born, then we wouldn't be in this situation, which is very much a feeling that her mother gives her. Like this didn't come out of nowhere. And like I said, she is not interested in beauty pageants. She does this because she wants to make her mom happy. She would rather they put, because there are entrance fees to these beauty pageants, so she would rather they put their money toward the electricity bill or toward rent or like necessities. So yeah, they have a very, very tense relationship. At one point Ruby's mother even slaps her on the cheek and then immediately kind of like goes, oh, walk for me, and pretends like everything is fine. Walk for me kind of like means, oh, practice your beauty pageant walk. And yeah, so and Ruby has this sort of like, she complies, she does it because she sees it as the only way to end the argument. And oh my God, if this wasn't like, this hit so deep. Like the way that this was portrayed felt so accurate. Like at one point, I remember I had to put the book down because I cried because I felt so much for Ruby. It reminded me, not in the details, but it reminded me of like my own situation growing up. So that's why I kind of like said, like, light trigger warning, proceed with caution if you have experience with this sort of thing, because it's very realistic. And yeah, it touched a nerve more times than it didn't. Also, like Ruby's mother is very controlling and close-minded. She has on multiple occasions basically forced Ruby to stop being friends with people that were either came out as queer, or she just kind of like supposed were queer or might be queer. This is what I meant when like I said that Morgan kind of ignores the reality of some people. Like Ruby cannot just come out. She would lose her home. She would lose any connection that she has with her mother. Like what is she supposed to do? I mean, this gets resolved in the end. Spoiler warning, because I will talk about it later on. But yeah, so let's talk a little bit about the other characters. We have Morgan's track mates, Ellie and Lydia. Lydia identifies as pan, but isn't out and doesn't really make a big deal out of it. And this kind of leads to frequent tension with Morgan, who wishes that Lydia would be more open about her identity. So, like, on more than one occasion, she asked Lydia to join her at Pride Club or to come, like, do a queer thing with her. And Lydia is always kind of like, yeah, no, I don't really want to. This was great as kind of like as building tension in the beginning, but the storyline just kind of doesn't go anywhere. It just kind of disappears midway through the book, essentially. Then we have Everly. I think her name is Everly. I think that's how you pronounce her name. Who is Ruby's best friend? She is very supportive of Ruby. We get a couple of scenes where they're at Everly's home, and she kind of like encourages Ruby, and like is just kind of like being a supportive friend to her. But she doesn't get too many chances to shine. Other than Aaron, Annika, and a third girl whose name I don't remember, who are like they are all part of the Pride Club at the school where Ruby and Morgan go to, and they become very supportive friends for Morgan. They all represent different queer identities. I only remember Aaron's though because he identifies as a gay trans guy, and he used to be friends with Ruby. They live in the same trailer park, but after he transitioned, obviously her mother did not allow Ruby to be friends with Aaron anymore. Also, they do not reveal Aaron's pre-transition name. I think there is a hint what it might have been, but they do not reveal his pre-transition name, which I find very nice. Like, don't reveal people's dead name, even in literature, even though they are fictional characters. So what I mean to say by like I don't remember their queer identities is yeah, they show different facets of being queer, but it's not the center point. That's not what they who they are as characters isn't just queer. They're more Morgan's support group. And again, uh, Aaron really stands out in this group, which is probably also why I remember his queer identity, because he supports Morgan, but he also isn't afraid to call her out. There's a very specific scene where it's kind of like up in the air if Ruby and Morgan get together and they have like a conflict because Ruby isn't out, and it's kind of like made it sound like Morgan would be an experiment, and he just kind of like, yeah, but that's just how you understood that. You never like you didn't have a conversation about it. You just assumed that. So he isn't afraid to call Morgan out if like she gets kind of like in her own way. In case this hasn't become clear, the theme is very much one of the central themes of the book is very much queer identity. Morgan is an out and proud lesbian. Aaron is a gay trans guy. Ruby later identifies as bi or pan. She doesn't settle on a definitive label, which I also thought was very good representation because you don't have to settle on a label. You don't have to be like, oh, I'm bi, I'm a lesbian, you don't have to. It's just sometimes it's enough to say that you are queer, and that's it. Another theme is queer activism. Kind of becomes very apparent in Morgan's storyline. Like I said, like she volunteers for this LGBTQ community center. She joins Pride Club, and they have an end of year project where they collect kind of like necessary stuff for queer homeless youths. So there are a fair few different issues that get brought up that have to do with people being queer. Also, at this community center, Morgan starts peer counseling another young queer athlete because sports and queerness aren't always the most compatible. I think this is also like a theme in the new hit show Heated Rivalry, and it's more of a it's more of a kind of like background issue in this one, but it does get mentioned. Also, like I said, Morgan is the only athlete in Pride Club, so like there still seems to be very much stigma around that. Other theme is family pressure. This is mostly tied to Ruby's home situation because like she doesn't want to do these beauty pageants because she is forced to by her mother, and she doesn't really know how to say no. But the whole like pageant storyline is also tied to the ending. Spoiler warning for the ending, because eventually through one of these pageants, she earns a scholarship to a local community college with a good automotive program, and this then opens up some possibilities for her to escape this family pressure and home this situation at home. One thing that I do want to mention about this book is there is like kind of like this relationship dynamic between Morgan and Ruby, where the book very early on establishes chemistry between those two leads. So there's like attraction there, there's tension there, there's excitement there. They do kind of like rub against each other, and there's like this sense that they're very much into each other. But even when they got together about a little more than halfway through the book, I was still waiting to see if they are compatible, like if their values align, if their personalities fit together, and what their long term dynamic would be. Like I said, there's this very big friction point of like Morgan is out and wants everybody else to be out too, and Ruby just can't afford that. So that's like this very, very big tension point, and I feel like that just clash really hard. So let's talk about the story arc, the pacing, and the breakup. Major spoilers ahead here. I will talk about the climax of the book. I will put in a timestamp somewhere around here where to skip to in case you don't want the full spoilers. So, for one thing, like I said, it takes a little over half the book for Ruby and Morgan to get together. There is a lot of teen angst along the way. There's a lot of will they, won't they. It started getting a little too much, a little too annoying, but then we get to the point where they do get together, and I was kind of like, okay, okay, fine. And once they are together, once they get together, it becomes this push and pull between Morgan, who wants to be open about their relationship, and Ruby, who's just not ready to. And throughout, because it's a dual POV book, I don't remember if I mentioned this in the beginning, but it's a dual POV book. So we get Morgan's perspective and Ruby's perspective. And you can sense that Morgan is getting really, really frustrated, especially through her perspectives. And great tension building device, by the way. But I also started getting worried that she just won't be able to understand Ruby's perspective. Which I mean, yeah, I get it. It's also like very good potential for character development and character growth. But like it was kind of like I am seeing this train wreck happening. I was also noticing a lot of like I hope she understands from both sides without them communicating with each other what they are supposed to understand. And that just doesn't work. You can't just say, I hope she understands without explaining what the other person is supposed to understand. And I get that they are teenagers, so they are not supposed to have perfect communication skills. Where would they get them from? They're still like growing up and learning. But that was just kind of like, yeah, but you need to communicate that with each other. Generally, communication was a big issue in this relationship. Especially Ruby just is characterized as this person who's just not very good at communicating. We get this kind of like with her mother. She doesn't know how to say no to her mother. She doesn't know how to set boundaries. She doesn't know how to communicate how she feels. She associates love with punishment, with pressure. So you get where she's coming from. Again, this would have made it very unrealistic if she then suddenly were able to perfectly communicate with Morgan. But it's just kind of like it's a thing where I'm like, the third act breakup is because of miscommunication, isn't it? I don't know how I feel about that. But I like that neither perspective, neither the I want to be out and I want to be proud, nor the I can't be out right now, I can't be open about this relationship right now, neither of those perspectives were portrayed as right or wrong. They were presented as a matter of perspective and available support. Of course, Morgan can be out and proud. Her parents support her, her brother supports her. She has a very supportive community of queer friends. Of course, she can go out and be active and try to make the world a better place. Ruby just kind of has to focus on herself. She has to get out of this very shitty home situation fast. and she can't be out in this very shitty home situation, because then her situation will get even shittier because she won't have a home. But I do like that, like, the book presents both as valid perspectives. Although, in case you couldn't tell, I was siding very much with Ruby. In her current circumstances, she did the best she could, I feel. Let's talk a little bit about pacing, because I feel like the book dragged in the middle. I mentioned it, like, it was getting a little bit like a get together already, get to the point where they're together. But because it happens a little over halfway through the book, they get very little time as a couple. Like, Ruby and Morgan aren't together for very long. I think we have like maybe 6 chapters of them being together. And even in those 6 chapters, you can kind of see the conflict coming from a mile away. And then the breakup itself dragged out over multiple chapters again. Like, there was a miscommunication, then they tried to solve the miscommunication, but that solving of the miscommunication led to another miscommunication, and then because it's a dual perspective book, it kept switching back and forth, and which, served a purpose. I know why the author decided to do that, because then you get the conflict from both sides, but it meant that you had 4 or 6 chapters of them being together, and then you had another 4 chapters of the breakup occurring. So that felt a little, uh, it dragged. There was a near scare somewhere around the middle. So all of the characters go to a house party thrown by one of the lacrosse players that Ruby is casually hooking up with at the start. Like I said, she isn't out, so she has this like kind of situationship with him. Everybody gets drunk, and I was pretty much expecting all the way throughout these chapters that Morgan was going to get S8. There even seemed to be a bit of a setup for it, because 2 other lacrosse players harass her in the school corridor and call her a homophobic slur. Again, the slur isn't actually mentioned, but you get the sense that it's there. I was kind of and then she even has a situation where she gets upset about something that Morgan does and runs into a bedroom in the house. And I was like, oh God, oh God, oh God, please don't, please don't, please don't. But then nothing happens. Actually, like, 2 friends from the Pride Club saw her running off, and they go to comfort her. So nothing bad happens. But this was so tense, and I was reading this and I was like, oh God, this is not going to end well. But then it ended well. Alternatively, same moment, I was expecting Tyler, the lacrosse player that Ruby hooks up with, to take advantage of her, because she gets really drunk at this party. Like, because Morgan runs off and she like knows that she upset her, and then she just gets blackout drunk. And there's this mention at the very beginning that she only sleeps with Tyler using a condom. That she's very adamant about that. Like, use protection. And she's right, use protection. But so I was fully expecting him to go like, oh, she's blackout drunk now, I can do what I want now. He doesn't. They actually have this like really heartfelt conversation around consent, and like, oh, I wasn't going to sleep with you while you were drunk. You can't consent like that. Which, I mean, bare minimum, but it was so nice to see. It was, you don't get these conversations in YA books typically. So I was very glad to see it. Let's talk about the ending and my final verdict of this book. So at the end, Morgan again, in case you missed it, major spoilers, I am going to talk about the ending here. So at the very end, Morgan has this growth moment where she has a conversation with I think he's a American football player that she's peer counseling at the community center. And she suddenly understands Ruby's perspective. Well, not suddenly, it's throughout the conversation, because this football star's partner also is in a very similar situation where he's just not ready to come out, but that doesn't mean the relationship has to end if you don't want it to. And so Morgan has that growth moment when it comes to Ruby, but also Ruby's situation changes. So there's this through line where she goes to the town's garage, and the mechanic there used to be her stepdad. Like, he and her mother used to be married, and he still kind of acts as a father figure to her. And she basically goes like, oh, like, I divorced your mom, I didn't divorce you, kid. If you ever need a place to stay, I'm here for you, which is very sweet. So she has the ability to come out to her mom and still have a place to go to. And also there is like this beauty pageant that offers the first 6, like, people who place in the first 6 spots, so top top six essentially. They offer these people a scholarship to the local community college, which Morgan actually, like, she places six, so she wins the scholarship, and that gives her a path for her future. And I feel like this kind of makes Morgan's growth moment a little bit uh, it voids that a little bit, because the main issue was Ruby's situation that didn't allow her to come out. I mean, like I said, she still isn't fully out at the end. There are a select few people who know, and I think there's this sort of insinuation throwaway line that she rekindles her friendship with Aaron. But like I said, like, this was the major game changer. This is what needed to happen in order for this relationship to kind of like work out. So I feel like Morgan's growth moment is good. I was waiting for that to happen, but because Ruby's situation so fundamentally changes, it made it feel like, oh, so essentially she didn't really have to learn anything, did she? Final verdict. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars because I enjoyed the characters. I liked the characters. Like I said, there was this immediate sense of who they were. They do grow as characters, but they don't fundamentally change who they are as people. So there's character consistency. There was a nice plot progression. Like I said, it drags somewhat in the middle and it is a tad predictable, but I mean, it's a queer YA romance story. You kind of know what happens in a romance story, so it's not like I was expecting the plot to be hugely surprising. I was glad that the scares didn't turn out to be actual scares. But yeah, so solid plot progression, if it had predictable. The writing was decent. I was able to follow the story. I was able to read it very quickly, so it was decent, but it was not amazing. Nothing to write home about, really. But it was decent, so it gets a star. The ending, I would say it's realistic, but also hopeful. Not everything wraps up neatly, so there's still stuff with Ruby's mom that's a little bit up in the air. And like I said, the whole thing with Lydia, Morgan's track teammate, that doesn't really get resolved. It doesn't even really get picked up again. So not everything is wrapped up neatly. And at the end, Morgan and Ruby do seem like a solid couple, but I'm still not entirely sure of their end game. Like they work for now for who they are right now, but I feel like Morgan will go off to like a more distant university in order to pursue her track career, and Ruby will stay in her hometown with this local community and do this automotive program. So I feel like there is kind of like the sense of like they might drift apart. They might not be completely endgame, but I actually like that. I actually like the sense of like, yeah, they are together right now. They work as a couple right now, but they don't have to stay together forever. I kind of like that. So that's a star as well. So this is how we arrive at the 4 out of 5 star rating. Final question. Do I recommend this book? Yes, if you want a cute LGBTQ story with a generally light tone but some darker elements. Like I said, Ruby's home situation hit very close to home for me, and I feel like people who have experience with parental abuse will agree with me. So this is why I include the trigger warning, and I will recommend that you proceed with caution. So because some of the scenes with Ruby's mom could potentially be triggering for you if you have experience with that. But overall, I had a good reading experience. I enjoyed reading this book. There was emotional depth, there was character depth. It's a cute story that touches on important elements like queer activism, difficult home situations, particularly for queer youths. So, yeah, it's a solid story. Like I said, 4 out of 5 stars. And I do recommend it if you want a fluffy story with some heavier elements that do get resolved by the end. So, next week we will talk about another Sapphic love story, Last Night at the Telegraph Club by Melinda Lowe. So, stay tuned if you're interested in that and subscribe if you don't want to miss it. But for now, this is me signing off. Thanks everyone for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please make sure to like, share, and comment down below. And don't forget to hit subscribe if you don't want to miss any of my future videos. I also have a Patreon that you can subscribe to, starting at as little as $2 a month. which gives you early access to any of my videos. Higher tiers include access to exclusive Patreon-only content and the chance to suggest books, plays, or poems for any future analysis. For now, that is it from me, and I'll see you next time.